Looks like we've got another mystery on our hands.
You need help.
They all deserve to die, and die they shall.
Looks like we've got another mystery on our hands.
And that's when the fun will really begin.
Hey, what's up? Happy spooky month. It's October, the most scariest month of the year. Not really, because vampires and werewolves don't really exist, but you know what does? SCPs. Yes, SCPs. SCPs, Special Containment Project. Now, I've been watching a few reactions on this. Nobody in particular. If like the thumbnail looked creepy or something like that, I would click on it. But I think I'm gonna start going down this rabbit hole because I find it to be very interesting. Because some of these people and some of these monsters or creatures or stuff like that belong in movies. They could literally make a whole movie on just the characters that the creators of this genre or this thing, I don't know what you would call it, is. So in this video, we're gonna look at what some people would call the top 10. Now, this is their list, not mine. I only know a few. I can't even say I know 10. But anyway, let's get into some SCPs. All right.
The SCP Foundation is an organization dedicated to protecting humanity from the supernatural, whether it's dark gods, cursed objects, or killer creatures. But today there's been a containment breach, and the fate of the entire world is at stake. To ensure you'll survive, you'll have to arm yourselves with knowledge. Thankfully, we've got you covered, with the lowdown on 10 of the scariest monsters that the Foundation has to offer. We'll start on what you might call the
Like I said before, this is their list. If I had to pick, I know a couple. Anyway, let me know who your favorite SCPs are, you know, so I can do a video on those. Please leave that in the comments.
mild end of the spectrum and end with pure unfiltered nightmare fuel. Beware and be ready. It's time to face your darkest fears. Number 10, SCP-169, the Leviathan. Thalassophobia, or fear of deep water, is one of the most common fears out there, which is why we're starting our countdown with SCP-169.
Oh, I definitely have a fear of deep water. I can swim my ass off, but if you go to a river where I can't see the bottom or even see what's in it, I can't do it.
SCP-169 is described as a massive marine arthropod, so large in size that no structure on Earth is capable of containing it. It measures between 2,000 and 8,000 kilometers in length. That's almost 5,000 miles. It's so large that it was originally thought to be an archipelago of islands. While its exact location is difficult to track, it's believed to be somewhere in the southern Atlantic off the coast of South America. This SCP is also unfathomably old, having been around since at least the Precambrian era. It's currently unknown if the creature is capable of reproduction, and little is known about its feeding habits. According to researchers, it's likely that the creature is dormant, which is a terrifying prospect when you consider how much damage a creature of this enormous size could cause if it woke up. Even in its dormant state, it causes small earthquakes and tiny alterations in the Earth's rotation. So we wouldn't want to be around to find out what would happen if it started really swimming around. Worse still, since it's an arthropod, there's a chance that it would be able to breathe on land, though its size might prevent it from ever fully rising up from the depths. If you don't live near the coast, you can count yourself safe from SCP-169. However, this next one could appear anywhere, and what's worse, you could end up just
Hold on, before they move on to the next one, oh man, forget that. It's in the water. I would just let like a 1 megaton nuke. I would find it, like I would strap it to his head or something. I don't know. If it's that big, I might be able to stick it in his nostril. But boom, game over, bitch.
just like him if you aren't careful where you hang out. Number 9, SCP-3663, the Adventure of the Cardboard Box. SCP-3663 was once a boy between the ages of 8 and 12 who, while playing in some disused sewer tunnels with a friend, made a cardboard monster costume for himself that he was then unable to remove. Over time, the costume fully fused with his body to the point that even his bones, muscles, and organs are now constructed entirely of fabric, tape, and other common craft materials. SCP-3663 teleports from place to place, seemingly at random, manifesting in any tunnels or tunnel-like structures and grabbing any nearby people, transporting them with him to the next location. When asked about the motives behind his actions, the SCP responded by saying, "The tunnel monster captures people. That's me, I'm the tunnel monster. I capture people and I take them into tunnels where I live. It's what I do. I have to do it." He then began crying, finally saying, "I don't want to play anymore." While this SCP doesn't cause any harm to his victims outside of a feeling of intense fear upon physical contact, the real horror comes from the fact that the SCP Foundation has yet to discover what caused the boy to become fused to his homemade costume, or what led to his mental degradation, meaning that this horrible fate could potentially happen again to any unsuspecting child who decides to play in abandoned tunnels. If that isn't existential...
Okay. This is scary to y'all. Infographic information people. This one is scary. This even made the list. Are you freaking serious?
You need help.
Cardboard monster kid. Teleports people but doesn't hurt them. Shut the fuck up.
Terrifying enough for you, just wait, because the worst is yet to come. The next SCP causes changes that are even deadlier and more unbelievable, and it might be in your house right now. Number 8. I am SCP-426, and I am an ordinary toaster. Confused about why I'm talking about this SCP in the first person? Well, any humans attempting to describe this anomaly are unconsciously compelled to only refer to me in the first person. There seems to be no way to avoid doing this, and the more time humans spend around me, the compulsion to refer to me in the first person evolves into a genuine belief that they themselves are also toasters. Though this might sound ridiculous at first, the effect quickly takes a turn for the deadly. I was originally discovered by the Foundation when members of the family who first owned me were found dead in their home. The wife had died from electrocution after putting her tongue into an electrical socket in an attempt to plug herself into the wall, while her mother had swallowed so much bread that her stomach ruptured. According to the Foundation, the harmful effects start to manifest after about 2 months of continuously being in my presence, and I am functionally identical to any ordinary toaster that you might find in a store. So if you were thinking of buying a toaster, maybe it'd be wise to avoid it and just use the oven. But if you think I'm scary, just wait until you hear what's next.
Hold on, before we go further, that's not scary. The knife is scary. Do y'all know about the knife? I can't remember the number of the knife, but the SCP that is a knife, that's way scarier than the toaster.
Number 7. SCP-072, the shadow under the bed. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night with your feet sticking over the edge of your bed, you'll be rightfully terrified of this next SCP. SCP-072 is a shadowy, translucent creature resembling an elongated human hand with sharpened fingertips. It attaches itself like a parasite to the shadows under beds, and multiple instances of 072 can occur in any beds within a 10-meter vicinity of the original. During the day, SCP-072 is inert, but once a human has laid on the bed, this SCP waits until the person is asleep and entering REM sleep. If the person's foot is hanging over the side of the bed, the SCP will begin tapping on the foot until the person awakes. Once awake, they'll be frozen in a state of sleep paralysis, helpless to do anything as the entity uses the tips of its fingers to slowly and meticulously slice off small pieces of flesh from their feet. People who have experienced this say they were fully aware of the pain that SCP-072 was causing them, despite the fact that they were unable to move. When an instance of
Oh my God, I remember sleep paralysis. I used to be able to enter that avatar state at will as a kid. Like I knew the exact moment when I was sleeping or trying to go to sleep. I used to actually be able to do it. It was scary when it happened the first time because I didn't have like conscious thought of it. But while in it for the first time, I realized I could control it. I'm super freaking weird. Like I used to do that on purpose and then I stopped because it was like one time it was really hard to like break myself out of it. But literally I'm awake, but my body can't move. It's like, yeah, it's crazy.
If SCP-072 is found in a building, the bed the entity is attached to must be destroyed as soon as possible, as well as all other beds in the radius of the infection. Instances of SCP-072 can be easily destroyed and detained, but when the SCP is a fixed location like our next SCP, that can be a little trickier and a lot deadlier. Number 6. SCP-354, the Red Pool. According to Foundation records, this next SCP was discovered by survivors of a plane crash somewhere in northern Canada. The SCP has since been closed off and is being constantly monitored by a dedicated team to ensure nobody and nothing gets in or out of the containment area. However, this SCP isn't dangerous in and of itself. It's what comes out of it that you have to worry about. SCP-354 is a pond full of deep red liquid that resembles but is not fresh blood. It has no banks, rather the liquid congeals around the edges and gradually becomes more solid until it completely blends with the soil around it. If the pond has a bottom, it's yet to be found. Periodically, hostile monstrous entities will emerge from the pond. Past instances have included a giant bat, a bear-sized animal with spines like an echidna, and a humanoid reptilian creature. And if that isn't bad enough, many people at the research site built to contain the pond believe that it's sentient and has been growing in size in response to the Foundation's containment efforts. As terrifying as the idea of a sentient lake full of monsters might be, all you have to do to avoid that one is stay out of northern Canada. This next SCP could be in the same town as you right now.
Whoa. I'm not happy about what they're doing with that. Like, have they tried to, like, is it fluid? Did they take a sample? Can we evaporate this crap? Why aren't they using bombs? You can bomb stuff, man. Military knows how to do that very well. They need to utilize it. Maybe flamethrowers. Evaporate it or something.
You wouldn't know until it was too late. Number 5. SCP-2086, the Living Bus. Have you ever found yourself on the wrong bus? It can be a pretty stressful situation. But imagine if the bus you got on was not only going the wrong way, but actually luring you into its lair in order to feed you to its children. That's exactly what happens to the victims of SCP-2086, a species of giant insect that in their adult form are indistinguishable from an ordinary city bus. SCP-2086 nests in junkyards, building nests from old scrap metal for their children, who are much smaller and haven't yet developed their bus-like features. While SCP-2086 can fly using huge wings that fold up to form the roof of the bus, their usual mode of locomotion is rolling along.
All right, somebody has a hell of imagination. Like, this is like cartoonish at best. Like, come on. Y'all list a top 10 is like spoiling my YouTube video. Like damn, I had high hopes for you bringing me the heat. This is like Miss Frizzle Magic School Bus bullshit.
On city streets, picking up human passengers. Once the adult SCP-2086 has collected enough victims, it'll release a noxious gas into its body cavity, knocking them out, at which point its young will drag the unconscious bodies out and consume them by sucking out their insides through hair-like filaments. If that's not gross enough for you, the drained husks of SCP-2086's victims are then fused to the inside of the creature's body and preserved with naturally occurring chemicals, serving as decoy bus drivers. But even this will still seem like a pleasant commute compared to the victims of our next horrifying monster. Number 4. SCP-049, the Plague Doctor. SCP-049 is a creature that resembles a medieval plague doctor, but instead of healing patients, this creature has been known to cause what could be described as a fate worse than death. SCP-049 is humanoid, and while it looks like someone in a plague doctor costume, tests have concluded that the cloak, hat, and mask are all part of the creature's body. It can communicate in multiple languages and has stated its main goal is to rid the world of pestilence. Nobody is clear on what that means, but the SCP will get extremely agitated and aggressive if it encounters anyone it deems as infected with pestilence. Anyone this creature touches will die immediately, and autopsies have been inconclusive on the cause of death. If after killing a person SCP-049 decides that the pestilence hasn't been cured, it will conduct a surgery using a variety of strange tools. Once this surgery is complete, the patient will often rise from the dead as a mindless zombie. At this point, SCP-049 will deem them to be cured. Number 3. SCP-087.
I might look into that one. That was a good one. I need to hear the whole story on this plague doctor. I'm gonna find that video.
The staircase. Imagine the deepest, darkest basement you can think of. Now imagine it goes on forever. That's essentially the core of what SCP-087 is. This SCP is a
Oh yeah, there's a game based on this one. I've seen people play that
staircase
game.
located somewhere on a university campus that is so dark and so deep that even a 75-watt bulb can only illuminate a couple of steps at a time. The staircase has no end, extending far below what both the layout of the building and the geography of the area around it should allow. When walking down the staircase, individuals will at some point begin hearing a child's voice calling up to them from about 200 meters below. No matter how far they descend, however, the child's voice never gets any closer, and no child has ever been seen. What has been seen, however, is a disembodied white face with no pupils, mouth, or nostrils that appears behind people who try to descend the staircase. This face, known as SCP-087-1, is not the source of the child's voices, but in some cases, it's been recorded chasing SCP Foundation D-Class personnel up and down the staircase. We don't know exactly.
Oh, D-Class means you're expendable. Yeah, declassify you. You have no class anymore. Go die.
What happens when the face catches you, but we're pretty sure we don't want to know. Almost no one who runs into SCP-087-1 has returned back to the top of the staircase, and those that did were left in terrible states that might even be worse than death. Number 2. SCP-1076, the only child. Humans have a natural drive to care for their young, and that compassion is part of what has allowed us to thrive as a species. What makes SCP-1076 so scary is that it seems to be a creature specifically evolved to exploit that very instinct. SCP-1076 is a race of creatures that resemble disheveled, homeless human children between the ages of 3 and 6. Dressed in rags and covered in dirt. These creatures are mute and initially only appear to parents who are walking alone. Once the adult spots the child, they'll be overcome with the desire to protect it and will immediately take it home. Once SCP-1076 has been taken in, the adult, as well as any spouse or additional caregiver in the household, will become obsessed with them to the point that their own biological children experience severe neglect. Even if child services are called, they will ignore the children as well and focus all their attention on SCP-1076. As time goes on, the adults of the household will begin to neglect their own needs as well, meaning that an SCP-1076 encounter usually ends in the adult who took the creature in dying from exhaustion, dehydration, or starvation. In cases where the adults are separated from SCP-1076, they become extremely violent in an attempt to get back to their baby. To make things even more disturbing, if two SCP-1076s are ever placed in close proximity to each other, they will viciously attack each other on sight, biting, scratching, and beating each other until one or both SCPs are dead. And now, after surviving this carousel of horrors, we have the most terrifying of all. Number 1. SCP-096, the Shy Guy. We'd love to show you a real picture of what SCP-096 looks like, but if we did, we'd essentially be sentencing you to death. Even seeing a part of this SCP's face can spell doom. SCP-096 is a hairless humanoid entity about 7 feet in height, who behaves in an animalistic manner and shows no sign of intelligence or sapience. While usually it's docile in temperament and content to either sit or pace in its containment cell, if anyone is unlucky enough to see its face, it will go on the warpath. The SCP becomes agitated, flying into a blind rage until it's tracked down and killed whoever caught a glimpse of it. No amount of distance can save you either. The effect still works through photo and video, and no matter where you are, SCP-096 has an innate sense of your location. When it's tracking someone down, nothing can stop it. Its top speed hasn't been recorded, and it's able to run through tanks and can even continue moving when its torso has been pulverized with bullet holes. The only thing that can stop SCP-096's rampage once it starts is for it to kill anyone and everyone who's looked at its face. See, we told you it was horrifying. If you're hungry for more creepy...
All right, y'all. That is Infographics Top 10, and I think it was pretty lame, but I like some of them, and I'm going to look into those SCPs, but come on, y'all could do better. Maybe it's the cartoonish nature of your animation or something like that. Or, I mean, I don't get it. Like, no, I'm not going to say that. The animation's cool. You pick some terrible ones. There are way worse SCPs than... I say about like 7 of them that you pick. You could have picked way worse. Anyway, that's the video. If y'all want to see more SCPs, let me know in the comments. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, and be safe in this spooky month. to the next video. Peace.
It seems like there is a biochemical basis for at least the way people identify, demonstrate, magnetize an imaginary category, something that we need to examine a lot more closely.
You need help.
Looks like we've got another mystery on our hands.